Some of you folks want to be able to have your cake and eat it too. And if you have more than one vCenter server, that means you've got to have more than one NSX manager. And when you have more than one NSX manager, the standard distributed logical routers and switches will not be able to cross the vCenter boundary. So in this nugget, we're going to create universal objects, a universal transport zone that can then support universal NSX switches so that we can cross those boundaries. To get a chance to see how universal objects work in an NSX environment, I've logged on to the VMware Hands-On Lab, specifically HOL 1925, logged on to the vSphere web client through opening the web browser, and logged on as administrator at vSphere.local. And let's head over to hosts and clusters, where we can see that in this environment we have two regions, each governed by a separate vCSA. They're both tied to the same single sign-on service so that we can see all of them within the web client. I've modified the current configuration from the default so that we can get a chance to build up a universal configuration pretty much from the ground up. We'll head down to the networking and security node from the home menu. We have two NSX managers, because remember it's a one-to-one relationship between NSX managers and vCenter servers. Normally their default role will be listed as standalone. Because I yanked a bunch of stuff out, but not quite all of the things that are associated with the universal roles, it's still listed as transit right now. So what we're going to do is go to 192.168.110.42, select it, and head up to Actions, and indicate that it's going to have the primary role, which is associated with replicating objects to a server that hosts the secondary role. We'll go ahead and say yes. Now that that server has been configured as the primary, let's select the other NSX manager, go to Actions, and set it as a secondary. Oh wait, we can't do that. We can assign a different primary, but we can't assign it as a secondary here. Instead, what we do is we go to the primary and go to Actions, and we get all sorts of new actions, including the ability to add a secondary manager. That's what we want to do right now. From the drop-down menu for secondary manager, we'll go ahead and choose 210.42, and then for the username, we're going to use our single sign-on credentials of administrator at vsphere.local with a password of VMware1 exclamation point, VMware1 exclamation point for the confirm, and then we can click add. It'll accept the thumbprint. Now that our managers have been configured, let me hop over to the NSX controller nodes, because I'd like for you to notice that we have a duplicate controller node here. Controller 01 appears twice with the same exact IP address, and in fact in both cases being managed by the primary manager 192.168.110.42, even though the NSX manager listed with it is associated separately with 110.42 and 210.42. What does it all mean? In order to maintain those universal VXLANs, we need to have a consistent set of controllers that keep track of that information, and that's exactly what we see right here. Let's go build those controllers something to take care of. We'll head over to Logical Networking Settings and Transport Zones, and then we'll go ahead and click the Add button to create a new Universal Transport Zone. We'll give it a clever name like Universal Transport Zone, and then we'll flip the magic switch of Universal Synchronization. We'll leave it with unicast so it's controlled by the cluster, and add the clusters of both management and the compute cluster here in region A1. Now what about the other region? Don't worry, we'll add them in just a second. We'll go ahead and click Add, and then we can select that Universal Transport Zone, and we can click Connect Clusters. But our clusters are already added. Let's cancel out of that. From the drop-down menu at the top, let's switch to the other NSX manager. Now that we're focusing on the other NSX manager, we can select the Universal Transport Zone. Notice it's already here, and we can connect clusters to it, and we get a different list of clusters, the clusters that are associated with this other vCenter server. We'll select the cluster for region B01 and click Save. Notice what happens if I click Add to add a new Universal Transport Zone. I can create more transport zones, but the Universal switch is no longer available because there can be only one Universal Transport Zone created for our environment. We'll click Cancel. To add a VXLAN to this, we'll need to head over to Logical Switches and create a logical switch that uses the Universal Transport Zone. So we'll click the green plus. And what we're going to do is create 5 different logical switches to connect to the web, app, and database tiers, as well as some transit switches to support access to edge routers. For the first one, we'll create a U for Universal Web Tier, and we'll click Change for the Transport Zone, and select the Universal Transport Zone and click OK. As soon as we choose that, it goes to unicast to match the type of the transport zone. We're set, we'll click OK, and we're going to wash, rinse, repeat, and do the same thing for our other switches. Now that we've created all those universal switches, we can start binding virtual machines to them. And the easiest way to do that is, of course, right here to right-click and choose Add VM to a universal switch. Here on the app tier, we'll go ahead and add the app virtual machine, bump it over to the right, click Next. We'll add a check mark to add the network adapter, click Next, and Finish. Then we're going to wash, rinse, repeat for the database and web tier. If we wanted to add a virtual machine that's being managed by the other vCenter server, what would we do? Yeah, from the drop-down menu up at the top, we can switch to the role of secondary. Now we're seeing all of the devices that are accessible to the secondary NSX manager, which includes these universal devices, and we could right-click on any one of these, add virtual machines, and I just want you to notice we get a different list of virtual machines, those machines that are associated with this secondary region. Right now we actually don't need to plug any of these VMs in, so we're going to go ahead and cancel out of this. And so now we've done it. We've supported our cross vCenter environment by building a universal transport zone and attaching our clusters to it from multiple NSX managers, and then adding the NSX switches that rest on top of that, and then plugging the virtual machines into those switches. There's another nugget that's really tied to this one, and that's creating universal NSX distributed logical routers to route between these universal switches and out to edge networks. But for now, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.